Hi there, and welcome to A Song of Ice and Fire Explained. This is a video series where we explain the massive conspiracies going on in A Song of Ice and Fire. If you haven't seen our previous videos, we suggest watching those first. So, let's continue on with Tyrion 2, A Game of Thrones. This chapter is 3,546 words long, and is told from the perspective of Tyrion Lannister, the younger brother of Jaime and Cersei Lannister. In this chapter, as Tyrion and Jon Snow travel north to the Wall, they argue about the realities of what the Night's Watch really is. This chapter develops Tyrion and Jon's friendship, first hinted at in Jon 1, and sets up Tyrion's obsession with dragons to the reader. After a fortnight riding north from Winterfell, Tyrion is astonished by the enormous size of the north. He is traveling with Benjen Stark, Jon Snow, and 2 of his own retainers. Despite knowing the maps of the region as well as anyone, the land is bigger than he imagined. It has also grown colder, quieter, and far lonelier the further north they go, and the King's Road has narrowed to a wild track. 3 days out of Winterfell, the farmland has given way to the dense, dark forests of the Wolfswood. There, they meet up with Yoren, a brother of the Night's Watch, who is an interesting character and is suspected by some of being a spy for Varys. Anyway, Yoren is accompanied by 2 peasant boys condemned to join the Watch. That night, Tyrion notices Jon Snow looking at their new companions with dismay and feels sorry for the boy who has had such a hard life chosen for him. Tyrion feels less sympathy for Benjen Stark, who apparently shares his brother's distaste for Lannisters and seems intent on making Tyrion's journey north as uncomfortable as possible. However, Tyrion does take a small bit of revenge when he accepts a tattered old bearskin cloak from Benjen, a gift Tyrion thinks Benjen did not expect him to accept and is probably regretting. By the 18th night of their journey, the inns and settlements have long since disappeared, forcing the party to make camp. Being too small to help, Tyrion, as is his custom, goes away from the camp with a book about dragons, one of several brought with him from Winterfell. Tyrion has always been interested in dragons. He remembers seeking out the dragon skulls in King's Landing the first time he was there. He recalls having a torch with him when he discovered the skulls and having the sensation that they seemed to like it when he put his torch to them. There were 3 skulls much larger than the others, and one of the skulls could have swallowed a mammoth whole. Tyrion recalls that King Loren I, an ancestor of the Lannisters, had been about to defeat the Targaryen army when Aegon and his 2 sisters unleashed all 3 of their dragons and savaged the armies of the Reach and Westerlands, killing King Mern of the Reach while King Loren bent the knee. As Tyrion reads, he is approached by Jon Snow, who asks why he reads so much. He closed the book on a finger and said, "Look at me and tell me what you see." The boy looked at him suspiciously. "Is this some kind of trick? I see you, Tyrion Lannister." Tyrion sighed. "You are remarkably polite for a bastard, Snow. What you see is a dwarf. You are what, 12? 14, the boy said. 14, and you're taller than I will ever be." Tyrion explains that because his body is twisted and weak, he must rely on his mind, and that a mind needs books like a sword needs a whetstone. When Jon asks what Tyrion is reading, Tyrion begins to talk about dragons and how he has fantasized about them since he was a child, because of the resentment he feels towards his family. When Tyrion goes so far as to suggest that Jon must feel resentment towards his own family, Jon protests. However, Tyrion continues to push the issue, sarcastically describing how Lady Catelyn treats him, how Robb is only kind to him because he is the heir, and how Ned Stark must have had a good reason to pack Jon off to the Wall. When Jon replies that the Night's Watch is a noble cause, Tyrion describes the Watch as a dunghill heap for the realm's rapers, debtors, poachers, thieves, and bastards, all kept busy watching for imaginary grumpkins and snarks. When Jon asks him to stop, Tyrion realizes what he has been saying and feels badly. Reaching out to comfort Jon, he is attacked and knocked down by Jon's direwolf, Ghost. Unable to get up on his own, Tyrion is forced to apologize to Jon before receiving help. When Tyrion questions why the wolf attacked, Jon jokes that Ghost must have mistaken Tyrion for a Grumpkin, which amuses them both. Having calmed down, Jon asks Tyrion if the things he said of the Night's Watch were true. When Tyrion says yes, Jon accepts the truth grimly. The two share some wine and return to camp for a supper of squirrel stew. Tyrion is the last to retire, and Jon has the first watch. Tyrion feels sorry for the boy. And this is where Tyrion 2, A Game of Thrones ends. This chapter mostly sets up Tyrion and Jon's friendship, which is interesting because if Tyrion becomes an advisor to Dany, he might be the bridge that brings Dany and Jon together. This chapter sets up Tyrion's macabre obsession with dragons and resentment of his own family, which cleverly foreshadows his desire for Daenerys to bring fire and blood upon his own house in A Dance with Dragons, showing that George loves to foreshadow events and character arcs books in advance. After A Clash of Kings, or the first half of A Storm of Swords, you couldn't imagine Tyrion going off to join Daenerys in Slaver's Bay. But this chapter sets up both Tyrion's desire and motivation to do so. This chapter also introduces Tyrion's guards, Jaik and Morik. Morik serves as Tyrion's groom, cook, body servant, but not a true bodyguard, which leaves Jaik as the real guardsman. And that's about it for Tyrion 2, A Game of Thrones. In the next video, we'll cover Catelyn 3 and continue from there. In the meantime, here's the only real difference between the HBO TV show and book. In the TV series, Yoren doesn't appear in the scene with the two rapists. The book also doesn't specify that Rast is one of the captive rapists. In the show, Tyrion does tease Jon by describing what low-life scums his new brothers are, but is not knocked to the ground by Ghost, like he is in the book. Then, there's also an additional scene where Jon arrives at the wall and stares at it in awe. Anyway, that's it for today's episode. If you want to see more of A Song of Ice and Fire Explained, please like, share, and subscribe. Also, when you get the chance, try out Fantasy Flight's A Game of Thrones board game, digital edition.